Hi everybody, this is Phil Starke. I am here at the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Tucson, Arizona. That's Push Ridge behind me. And this is late May, which generally it's getting pretty hot in Tucson by late May. So sometimes a bit too hot to stand out here for 3 hours and paint. So I will bring sketchbook and do thumbnail drawings and more involved value drawings. And they serve two purposes. One is to set up a place where I can come back later and paint. I'll have the composition already set up and the main shadow pattern already set up, so when I come back to paint, I'm a little further along. Also, I will use these back in the studio to do small color studies from, where I have to use my own sense of color, and that really helps develop your sense of color. When you have the composition down in the sketchbook and you have the basic light and shadow pattern down, then coming up with colors in a color scheme to make the painting work is really helpful. It's good practice. These are what I'm using here. I've got a couple of sketchbooks. They're both about the same quality of paper. Just a good drawing stock, nothing too lightweight, but nothing too textured either. I don't use a all media paper that can hold watercolor or anything. That's just too textured. But you can see what I'm doing here, just simple small thumbnails. This one a little bit more involved, using maybe 3 to 4 values. But up here, just thinking about the same scene, but one more long horizontal, one square, and one more of a, or one vertical, and then one more square. So I have different things I can do with the thumbnails here. And thumbnails are basically just a small, quick, deciding where the shadow pattern is, which sets up the composition as well as the light. But I can also do more involved drawings where I'm using 3 to 4 values, and that's generally 2 values in the dark and then 2 values in the light, the paper being the lightest and then maybe a slightly darker halftone. So 2 lights, 2 darks, gives me a lot of dimension in the landscape. Then for my drawing materials here, I've got an ebony pencil, which is real dark, works real well. And then a 6B graphite. Usually I use 6 to 8B or 9B. They go up to 9B, which is really dark. And then this is a 2H. I don't use those very often, but they do set up kind of the lighter halftones. Again, with the paper being the white or the lightest, this gives me a slightly darker light, a little more of a halftone. And then once in a while I'll draw with a pen. This is a precision rolling pen, works real well. And I can still do the same thing, look for pattern, only more in terms of using lines to set up the shadows. And then a box cutter just to sharpen. Don't bother with a pencil sharpener. It doesn't give you enough point. It wears out real quick. It's getting a little fuzzy. So I just use the box cutter, give myself a 1/4 inch. And I don't necessarily sharpen them to a point that wears down too fast. And I'm looking for big masses instead of lines anyway. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and draw the peaks here, and I'm going to use the 2H pencil and the 6B pencil. 2H to get the drawing started, and I usually have templates of different sizes that I can make a square or an outline for where the paintings or the drawings are going to be. And the template can be for like an 8x10 painting, 9x12, 16x20, something like that. So, but I don't have those with me. All I'm going to do right now is see how a more of a horizontal works. If I don't have the templates, I'll do a horizontal, a square, maybe a vertical, just to see what composition works best. So with my 2H pencil here, I'm just going to do, and I don't do these very big, spend about 10-15 minutes on them. And I'm going to do this a little bit more of a horizontal. And these are not drawing for drawing's sake. I mean, it is good practice, sharpening the eye for composition and just drawing and seeing line. But the end result here is a painting. So I don't really care how it looks. I just need the information down. And that's what I'm after here. So I'm going to start real light. I have an eraser, but I rarely use it because I just draw real light. You probably won't be able to see it for a while. But I'm just going to lightly, I just put the pencil down, try not to lift it up, and just lightly start scribbling. Sometimes you can call it gesture of like the tree, the action of a tree or a hill or a mountain. And I keep going over it till I kind of get the right lines I want. It's kind of like if you've done figure drawing and you do 10, 20 second gesture poses. This is what this is, trying to get the gesture of the scene here. So when I do press down, I know where everything's going to go. Because I don't want to press down with a 6B or a 9B. Because I'm going to end up with it being too big or too small and I won't be able to erase. But I can real lightly put things in here and then come back and pick the right line. So start off real light, real scribbly, real gestury. Sometimes I will gesture in the shadow shape, the dark pattern. And I always take a photograph, of course, also. Use a lot of photographs. So I don't need to worry about detail. So I can get that from the photograph if it needs it at all. Most of the time it never even really needs it. But I'm going to outline a little bit of the shadow pattern that's in these cliffs. Cliffs will be kind of the focal point. Outline a little bit of the shrubbery that's up in the cliffs. It's a lot of individual shrubs, but they work better as a large mass and shape to give me some contrast against the lighter. And I got them a bit low, so I'm going to drop these trees down a little bit. I haven't committed to any shapes at all. And there's a mountain right here. I tend to hold the pencil more like this most of the time. Here I'm using it like writing, just to be a bit more accurate for smaller shapes. But generally, I'm scribbling more like this because you're using your whole arm and you're seeing bigger shapes. Now I'm going to put in what I see is more light halftone. Like the tree here is a dark, even in the sunlight. I mean, it's not a shadow pattern, but it is fairly dark. And same thing with these bushes here. I'm going to get these bushes kind of put in more halftone. So there's kind of my setup a little bit. I'm going to get the halftone of these small shrubbery back in here. Nice cloud shadow pattern coming over there. And I don't have to be exact. This kind of darker pattern of shrubbery in here is just a dark shape that helps set off the real light cliffs. And if I'm not perfectly exact with where the shape is or exactly how the shape is, not a big deal. I'm suggesting instead of trying to be too literal. Again, these are kind of a light halftone coming down into here. Now I'm going to start with my 6B, and I can outline a little bit some of the shadow pattern, and I'm going to start pressing down. I don't need to press down real hard because that stuff's it's dark enough. The main trunk there, trunk in there. And there's about, there's two large masses of foliage, this one and that one. When I look at it, I can see it's smaller masses, but I don't want to put those in. Keep it as big and as simple as possible. It's going to make composition stand out better. And then the tree trunk is down in here. Probably have it a bit too wide. Really too wide, but I'm going to get a little bit of outline here to suggest where the kind of tree stops and the shrubbery down here begins. And again, the end result here is a painting, not the drawing. So the drawing's not a end in itself. It's to help me simplify and figure out where these large masses are. Then breaking up those masses into simple dark and light shapes. Now, a lot of times I don't need that light halftone. I just need the strong shadow pattern, and that sets everything up. And a few definite lines, slanted lines to show the slanted hillside here, with a few clumps of some grass, some flat dirt. And I want to get these shadow patterns. These shadow patterns are not real dark out there, so I'm making them a bit darker just so they stand out more. And nothing wrong with outlining these shadow patterns to make them a little bit more substantial. Don't hesitate to get a definite shape to that pattern, so it's not too rounded, too unnatural looking, too symmetrical. I need it more natural looking. So outlining those shadow patterns works pretty good for the, just like in the painting sometimes, to really establish those dark areas in the painting. A subtle outline kind of works pretty good. And I want a little bit of, this is a wash, so there's some dirt areas, some grassy areas, and I can pick and choose what I see to put where I want to make it work. Now I'm going to get that 2H again and just lightly hit the sky. Sky is generally the lightest plane in the landscape. Not always here in the Southwest. When you have a clear blue sky on a clear day, especially in the afternoon, and those white granite, not white, but close to white granite rocks, you get a slightly darker sky and lighter lights on the rocks. And that's what I'm showing here now, is a little bit lighter rocks and slightly darker sky. And I don't want to get too carried away. Again, I can take a photograph and get all the picky stuff in these cliffs. It's a lot of interesting shadow pattern. I want to get the big shapes, and I want to be fairly accurate. I'm not just trying to throw anything in there, because I'm trying to draw what I see here. But at the same time, I'm also suggesting. I'm not trying to be too literal. And I want to get the outline pattern of the shrubbery on here. The shrubbery's fairly dark, but not shadow dark. So I can come back and hit it a little bit darker eventually. But and I'll get the 2H pencil here, get kind of a lighter halftone. But I'm just filling in. There's, no fancy technique to get the graphite down there. I don't want to press too hard. It just kind of I don't know, it has a kind of a dead feel to it. I kind of lightly fill in and get the pattern going and separating large masses. Some definite rocks in here. But again, the goal is not to do a perfect drawing, but I want something I can work from. I can set up the light pattern, light and dark pattern. I'm going to extend this down just a bit because there's a nice shadow coming across here. And the shadow is flat, so I want the drawing to be, I'm going to say brush strokes, pencil strokes here to be horizontal also. So I'm trying to follow kind of the shape of things. And I can keep going a little bit. There's some individual shrubbery here that kind of makes a difference. I don't want to get into those too much. But this gives me something I can set up with dark and light. And a little bit of halftone. Oops, that's my 2B. I want to darken these lights just a little bit. This is more of a rectangle, not as horizontal as I was thinking, but I think it is more of a square or a rectangle composition. I could easily turn this into water down here as well, because there is water here once in a while. Probably in July we will have a lot of water here. And there's some things I would change as well. There's some lights in this long shadow down here that I would have liked to have left. But this gets me set up pretty well, separating the planes, separating the big masses. I could come back, I could even do the drawing on the canvas in the studio and then come back out here and start the painting right away.